I like, click, subscribe, do all that. You know what time it is. It's Netflix time. This movie's called We Have Always Lived in a Castle. The fragile and secretive world of two sisters and their uncle crumbles when their charming cousin arrives with eyes towards the family fortune. A murder mystery that came out 2018, hour and a half long. Spoiler alert, let's just get it. So here we have Mary Blackwood, but often in the movie she's referred to as Mary Cat by her sister. Then we got the family portrait hanging on the wall, and the house is pretty much a wreck, so you're thinking to yourself, what the heck happened here? So basically we go back to a week earlier, and there's a sister Constance that we've been talking about. And there's their uncle Julian, who's in a wheelchair at this point in time. They never really explain why. Now apparently on Tuesdays, Mary has to go into the city to get food. But she hates going to the city because she's got to deal with people. But first she goes to a little garden and performs some type of witchcraft. At least that's what's going on in her mind, but bottom line is she can't perform witchcraft. And off she goes to the city. She goes to get groceries, but everybody's shunning her. The only person that even gives her a smile is this lady that's running this cafe. Then comes this fireman by the name of Jim. Apparently he had dated Constance a long time ago, but their father didn't approve. He somehow lost the chance to get at her after he was trying to get her to move away, and lost his car in the process. So he give less to the fuck about the Blackwoods. And they tease him about sitting on top of the hill. Apparently their father was a rich man. How he got his money is anybody's guess. She getting teased by kids, they talking about rats and poison and shit. So the deal is they always send Mary down to get groceries, but why just send Mary? And they all sit down and have dinner, and you're probably wondering, where is mom and dad? I'll get to that in a second. After the guests come in, Julian pulls this lady off to the side, cause she was asking questions. So apparently Constance had went to trial because she had killed both her parents. She ended up poisoning them with cyanide at the dinner table years ago. But somehow she wasn't able to do any jail time, and she's been in this castle since then. She has never stepped foot outside. And he always kept talking about blackberries. Is that how she did it? And every now and then when he's talking, he thinks he's talking to Constance's father, John. Which of course he's not around no more. I don't know if he's got some type of dementia or Alzheimer's or something. But then he says he was probably poisoned before too. So it raises the question, how the hell is he still alive? So anyway, after they dip, Julian goes back to quote unquote writing his book. Meanwhile, Mary's having dreams about her father actually still being alive. She talks about she's always getting these eerie feelings from Dad's room. The way Constance's role is, she plays off everything like nothing's wrong. She's usually smiling a lot, but this time she generally looks concerned. Then she sends Mary into the city again, but it's like, wait a minute, it's Thursday. It's not my day to go. And yeah, she definitely felt like something was off. She goes back in the garden, says the book was knocked down, whatever book she put up on a tree. And she's always been burying certain things in the garden. But anyway, when she comes back to the house, their cousin Charles showed up. They talk about how he looks just like father, and he might start acting like him too, but we don't know how he acts. But apparently Mary's not okay with this shit at all. So Mary used to bury a lot of things out there that used to be her father's, and that day she couldn't take it, so she went outside to sleep under the woods. And Mary's like, look, how long does he gotta be here? Constance's like, man, this is our cousin, he can stay as long as he wants. He keeps saying he's supposed to be there to help and all that, and for a while it looks like he genuinely is. Chilling with Julian and all that, but he basically thinks that Julian needs to be in a nursing home, because basically his mind's starting to go. Yeah, he constantly gets Julian confused for John. Then they all have dinner at the table. He gets into a slight argument with Mary. He keeps talking about plans that could take Constance away to like Italy and stuff. Julian's confusing him for John again. And the whole time I'm thinking to myself, is somebody gonna get poisoned at this table? But no, that doesn't happen. Later on, Constance tucks Julian into bed. And Julian's kept all these newspaper clippings about, the death of their parents. About them about to be orphans. About them being found dead at the dinner table. How Constance was charged with murder. Still not understanding how the hell she got off. Maybe because they got money. Maybe the population didn't like their parents or something. Who knows? Next day, Charles is fixing one of the steps in the backyard, and Constance is being swayed by Charles. Mary feels like she's being pushed further into the background, chilling with all her father's buried treasures. Later on, he helps Mary with the garden and finds one of John's gold watches been buried. He's like, what's going on here? Why is she over here burying all this gold? Constance smiles it off like it's nothing and then changes the subject. Later on, Charles is taking a bath. He comes out the bath real quick and sees Constance, and she's got this serious look on her face. We're like, what the fuck was she doing? She said she was just leaving him a towel, but there's this long, awkward pause. And she pretty much leans out the room and he closes the door. So Mary goes to Constance like, hey, you know when Charles is leaving? She's like, look, he came to visit us. He'll go when he's ready. So she basically asks Charles nicely to get out of the house. He's like, you know what? Constance wants me here, so I'm not leaving. And I guess he's been brainwashing Constance because she actually wants him to stay. Next day, he goes back to working on that step again. Then he finds a box under the step with a bunch of silver coins. He knows this is Mary's doing. He talks to Constance and is like, look, man, she has no right to keep burying all this stuff. He's like, man, this ain't chump change. Like, these coins, she could buy like half the bakery with this shit. But why is he so worried about where she's burying money? Unless he wants to get some money for himself. But then if that's the case, why even tell her? I know it sounds like I'm coming up with random scenarios, right? Then he goes to the little cafe spot. The boys find out he's a Blackwood too. Mary ended up following him. Against all her hatred for the town, she ended up following him just to see what he was doing. After he leaves, they like, man, that family gonna end up killing him too. So now Charles has been actually convincing Constance to put Julian in a nursing home. And the love between her and Mary is being pushed a little bit further away. Not that much, but you could tell there's a shift in attention that's being given. Then when it's just Mary and Charles in the room, he flat out tells it to her face. He's like, you can either be in the way or out of the way. That's some wild shit right there. Then they start dancing later on. They're talking about Italy and stuff like that. It's hard to figure out who to really root for. I mean, he is trying to get Mary out the way, but he's making some sensible decisions. Meanwhile, Constance was accused of killing her parents through poisoning methods, but she was never really convicted for it. The The thing is, at the time of the incident, she was willing to take all the blame for it. Mary's pissed off trying to go to sleep. Next day, Charles downstairs smoking his pipe, and at this point, he done moved in wearing all their father's clothes. She comes to his room and dumps a bunch of shit on his bed. He's actually been staying in their father's room. She dumped water in the bed, threw a bunch of dirt and stuff, and then she smashed a mirror. Charles comes upstairs like, man, what the fuck is all this? And every time he talks to her, she keeps talking to him about certain plants being poisonous, like mushrooms and stuff like that. And I noticed this is like the second time she's talked to him like that, about certain poisons and mushrooms, right? Next thing you know, in the kitchen, Charles spazzes it out on Julian, who still talks to him like he's John. Then Charles is like, man, Mary, somebody needs to punish you. And the way they arguing is like a flashback, probably to when she was thinking about her mom and dad. She goes back to the spot and finds all her trinkets dug up. Then she turns around and has visions about her parents. Her parents is telling her she must never be punished. Mom's just looking like, yeah, okay, sure. Then they're all having dinner at the table again. Mary doesn't even want to sit at the table. She's like, fuck this shit. Charles' irritation level is at an all-time high. So what Mary decides to do is go in her father's room, light up Charles' pipe, and throws it in a trash can with a bunch of papers. Oh boy. She finally comes back to the table. Charles starts talking, and she starts talking about poisons again. Charles had enough. He ends up chasing her up the steps and then gagging her or whatever. But then he lets her go and looks over towards his room. He lets everybody know there's a fire in his room. He's about to go get help from the fire department, but he made sure to reassure Constance and not nobody else. Which, of course, the fire that Mary started, and they watching it burn is blazing. Constance don't know what to do with herself. Uncle Julian had locked himself in another room down below. The fire department shows up. They really don't even want to put this fire out because of who's in there. But they got a civic duty to do, and they go put the fire out. Even though everybody else in the town wants this place to burn. So they put the fire out, but then the people start throwing rocks through the window like, fuck that shit, we looting. The people that was at the house came by before. They break into the one room, and they find Uncle Julian dead as shit. He snorted in too much smoke. Everybody's going out of control. Then he shoots guns in the air and he's like, yo, fuck all that shit. Gets back into control. And he chases everybody away. Then we see Constance and Mary sleeping out in the backyard. While this was going on, Charles was trying to break into this safe. It's got a ridiculous amount of money in it. But he couldn't get that shit open. Next day we see the house and all the destruction. They go back into the kitchen. Then we find out it was Mary that killed their parents the entire time. She had put the cyanide in the sugar. And she knew Constance didn't eat sugar like that, only her parents. The question is, why did she do it? Were her parents abusive to them or something? And they're not getting no love from them? Because in the flashback, it seemed like she had a good memory. Maybe it was just a false memory that she wanted to believe. Either way, this shit is wild. So anyway, these guys knock on the door. They tell her about Julian's funeral, but they never answer the door. They look at the steps all fucked up. They say clearly they can't go upstairs anymore. Then this guy comes by apologizing for breaking a chair. He brings over a roasted chicken and a pot pie. And other people in the community came by giving gifts, trying to be forgiven for their sins and all that. Then all of a sudden, Charles comes back to the door, pleading and letting it be back in. But Mary's making sure Constance doesn't open the door. Then he gets impatient and breaks down the back door. He grabs her, he's trying to get her to calm down. Then Mary bashed him in the back of the head with a snow globe. So he was thinking he's done deal dead as shit, but Mary made sure. She was like, fuck that. Then they buried his ass, and now we're at the beginning of the movie. And now we know why their house is all fucked up. Then we see her going to the door. These same little kids talking shit to Mary. Just talking shit. She opens the door, and they scatter like bitches. They ain't want that smoke from you. And they're basically gonna live in this house together for all of eternity, I guess. I don't know. Now, there could have been a lot of things to unpack from the cyanide stuff. Julian kept talking about the berries. We found out Mary hid it in the sugar. At the time, Constance was taking the rap for Mary. So I guess they couldn't prove she did it. You make your own assumptions out this shit. We have always lived in the castle on Netflix. Check it out. Like, click, do all that. You all know time. This is these easy best. Big. You got that slogan.